Mabuhay! I am Clan Garcia, your event moderator. I am a crusader of Philippine culinary heritage tourism, and I travel around the country to document heritage dishes and their wealth of stories. It's an honor to be a part of this event to continue the momentum in promoting Philippine cuisines, cultures, and history to the world. Again, so let's proceed. Thank you. Muchas gracias. Maraming salamat. This event is made possible by Sentro Rizal, Buenos Aires of the Philippine Embassy in Argentina, in cooperation with the National Commission for Culture and the Arts and the Department of Tourism. At this point, we would like to acknowledge our friends from media, culinary industry, academe, and friends from different continents. To give us the opening remarks, we would like to share with you, to give us the opening remarks, may I present to you a visionary leader blazing the trail in introducing Filipino foods in Latin America, Her Excellency LINGLINGAY F. LACANLALE, Ambassador, Philippine Embassy in Argentina.
Thank you, Clan. Buenas noches a todos y buen día para todos los que nos acompañan hoy. Gracias por participar de esta emocionante experiencia virtual sobre la comida filipina. Durante mis primeros meses en Buenos Aires, me di cuenta que no se sabe mucho de Filipinas en Argentina. Muy pocos saben que nuestro país tiene conexiones históricas y culturales con América Latina, gracias a nuestra herencia colonial común española. Por lo tanto, esperamos que este evento cree conciencia sobre estos vínculos a través de la comida. Tenemos el placer y el privilegio de tener con nosotros a dos destacadas expertas en el campo culinario, Felice Sta.MARIA, una historiadora y autora culinaria galardonada con múltiples premios, y Christina Sunae, célebre chef en Argentina, hija adoptiva de Filipinas, que ha puesto a la comida filipina en el mapa culinario de Latinoamérica. Hay un viejo refrán que dice: el camino al corazón de un hombre es a través de su estómago. Deseamos que este evento llegue a su corazón y a través de esta experiencia virtual puedan conocer a nuestro país y su rica gastronomía aún más. Esperamos que esto, a su vez, les aliente a visitar Filipinas y a probar en persona los deleitables sabores de la comida filipina. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Ambassador LACANLALE. Okay. Today we have a heavyweight guest. It's a privilege to be afforded with the presence of a highly acclaimed culinary historian and award-winning author specializing in cultural heritage. Will take us back in time through vignettes of history from prehistoric time, galleon trade, all the way to the 20th century. It's an honor to present to you the ever-gorgeous Felice Sta.MARIA.
Gracias, Clan. Distinguidas invitadas, es un privilegio presentar usando mi PowerPoint en inglés, cocina filipina y su vínculo histórico con Latinoamérica y España. Filipinas nunca ha tenido un asentamiento numeroso y generalizado de españoles y otros europeos, africanos y latinoamericanos. Por eso, contamos comidas con nombres en español y un extenso menú de sabores con influencia asiática. Por favor, disfrute de este breve resumen de por qué la comida filipina también es parte de su culinaria herencia.
The Philippines is part of insular Southeast Asia. In prehistoric times, there were migrations and maritime trade connecting the Asian continent, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia, and Polynesia. Culinary ingredients, preparations, tools, and terms moved around the region. Island food also reached the Asian continent, India, and Africa in prehistoric times. The Spanish galleon route connected Europe, the Americas, and Asia. Good weather for an Atlantic crossing was from December to May, when there were no hurricanes. Culinary changes aided by the galleon occurred much slower than they would today, not always at the same time, not in all colonies, and not everywhere in a colony. The journey from Acapulco to Manila took 3.5 months. A galleon left Mexico in February and was to arrive in Filipinas by May. On board were pieces of eight, gold bullion, royal documents, passengers, and provisions of Spanish comfort, such as dulce de membrillo. Bad weather, pirates, enemies during war, and shipwreck were real threats. They likewise confronted any ship heading east from Filipinas. Loaded with silks, porcelain, and other goods to sell in Mexico, the galleon had to survive one of the world's most terrifying trips. It took anywhere from 5 to 8 months. A galleon left Manila in June with the southwest monsoon, headed toward Japan, where it caught a current, helping sail the boat south to California and finally Mexico. The Acapulco Fair would open in November if all went well, just in time for the fun of Christmas shopping. One of the most sought-after products from Manila at the feriahan was Jalea de Balimbing, a preserve of the star fruit or carambola that originated in Southeast Asia. Nowadays, the Asian with a Spanish name but who does not speak Spanish is usually a Filipino. It is a situation that could be corrected. But into the 1950s, Spanish was still spoken by our elders. On Sundays, when a family gathered for lunch, there were several generations in attendance. Children ate at a separate table. When they became rambunctious, a grandmother reminded them about good manners. A friend's aunt warned, "If you sing while eating, you will leave the table crazy." Once she was out of hearing range, the children giggled and mimed a crazy singer. I mention this old nonsense saying because eating is supposed to be fun in the Philippines. Children are raised to enjoy eating. Whenever anyone attempted to bring up a problem, unpleasantness, or bad gossip at the table, he or she was shushed immediately. Suddenly, everyone began talking about the food being eaten to resurrect joy. Hunger was an enemy, and having food was considered a blessing. Food security was always valued. A food quota imposed by Ferdinand Magellan in 1521 and the burning of uncooperative villages contributed to his death during the first circumnavigation. When the conquest began in the Philippines after 1565, pagan villages were regrouped and often relocated. They became parish pueblos with a central plaza around which houses were built on identically sized lots. Every family was encouraged to grow food and domesticate pigs and chickens, not only so there would be no hunger, but so tribute to the king could be paid and the church could be given its share. The land needed to be cultivated, so agriculture would provide profit for the imperial government. When the galleon trade ended in 1812 with the Mexican Revolution, Filipinas was open to free trade. It increased opportunities for wealth among Spanish, natives, and the mestizos who were children of a Chinese father and a native mother. Instead of a common cane and palm house, the wealthy had stone houses. The wooden living area was on a second floor that sat on a stone foundation. It was strong enough to take a large, heavy dining table for a dozen or more guests. One's ability to entertain well and act courteously according to the customs of urbanidad, or gauges of success. But meals not only feed physical hunger and desires for social mobility in the Philippines, they also feed the social self. Filipinos have high interpersonal intelligence. They need to satisfy their hunger to socialize, to interact with people. Philippine cuisine functions to preserve social harmony and happiness. Nayanaya means to entertain and serve others, as well as to be a happy person. It is the closest to a native word for hospitality that I have found so far. It means Filipinos enjoy feeding others as much as they enjoy eating. While ginhawa can be defined as contentment, it is also defined as many different kinds of dishes as happens during a fiesta. A large variety of foods like at a buffet should guarantee happiness. The Spanish era introduced and circulated new culinary flora and fauna, ways to cook them, and new attractive savors. There were neither cows nor wheat in all New World and Asian colonies. Spain introduced cows and how to cook beef. On the second journey of Columbus from Spain to Hispaniola in 1493, he brought the first cows to the New World. In 1521, Gregorio Villalobos and Hernan Cortés introduced from Cuba cattle to Mexico for breeding. The savannas of northern Mexico, the Venezuelan llanos, the Argentine pampas, and the Great Plains of North America were ideal grazing lands for feral cattle. Brazil's cows originated from Portugal and propagated on the Sentro. Manila was established in 1571. Before 1598, Mexican-born cattle arrived traveling on galleons. The cow is said to have descended from the auroch, a large animal on the Indian subcontinent from where it spread to the Middle East, Europe, Africa, and China. By bringing cows to the Philippines from Europe, the animal was completing a circumnavigation. Beef was associated with being Spanish, and the colonials wanted to eat Spanish food in their territories around the world. Religious orders undertook ranching to earn money for their churches. There were still grasslands in some parts of the Philippines, but nothing as extensive as the Pampas and the Great Plains. However, with persistence and perseverance, ranches sprouted outside the walled-in city of Manila. The king also ordered that tame carabao be imported from China. The carabao or water buffalo is suited to working in rice fields. Resident Spanish felt that the milk produced by a carabao was considered more palatable, especially for the sick, than that from cow. Milk was also needed to make cheese, a provision carried by soldiers and sailors. In the Philippines, soft white cheeses are made and packed in banana leaf containers. Bread, beloved by the Spanish, was also a handy and portable provision during war. Wheat flour was imported into the colonies, but Spain tried growing wheat, and sometimes it succeeded. Catholic priests needed the finest, whitest wheat to make host. Assuring that there would be host was the king's priority. It was after the opening of Suez Canal in 1869 and the subsequent invention of steamships that the Philippines increased its bakeries, pastry shops, cafes, and direct exposure to Europe. Today, the Philippines has an astounding array of baked delights that incorporate native ingredients like purple ubi yam and coconut. It was easy for some Spanish cooking to slide into Philippine cooking because the foreign was similar to the native. The Philippines and Spain had what the New World did not: pork and rice. Wild pig is the ancestor of domesticated pig. Wild pig roamed the forests and swamps of Europe and Asia. By 4900 BC, pigs were domesticated in China. Philippine archaeological remains date pig domestication to 2000 BC, over 4,000 years ago. Pork was important in ancient Philippine rituals as an offering. It was a prestige food. There are even tales of magical pigs who could have provided food without cooking. Pork eating was encouraged by missionaries, it having become evidence in Spain that one was neither Jew nor Muslim, and therefore Christian. It continued as a Spanish Christian fiesta food, using the Spanish word lechon instead of the many Philippine pre-colonial words for pig. China is the birthplace of rice. 9,400 years ago, rice was already growing there. The earliest evidence of rice in the Philippines is dated to 3,500 years ago. For the everyday Philippine meal, rice is cooked with only water. Coconut water and coconut milk can be used too. Rice was introduced to Spain in the 8th to 10th centuries during its Moorish era. In fact, arroz traces to Arabic aruz, that traces back to uruza, an ancient Greek word of Iranian origin. Our food is really so global. Rice that is naturally colored black or purple was served in ancient times during Philippine feasts. For celebrations, rice is still colored golden using turmeric juice today. All ingredients for golden rice with chicken, called coning, are cooked together in a pot. Spanish missionaries introduced arroz a la valenciana. That begins with frying ingredients before adding rice grains. Two Philippine cooking techniques were recorded in 1521 during the circumnavigation. They are roasting and cooking with a liquid in a receptacle. The painting depicts rice in a bamboo tube stuck into a pot of boiling water. Different ingredients can be cooked that way. We end our story about Philippine food history by noting that cooking techniques with their accompanying technology and tools were added and became common to our countries. The late Philippine national artist Nick Joaquin considered guisado one of Spain's top 10 important contributions to Philippine culture. I spoke with Nick about it. He had based his conclusions solely on observation. I found historical evidence to prove there was no Philippine term for guisado as of 1613. But today there are hundreds of native guisados, and it is hard to imagine our cuisine without them. There were other cooking techniques from around the world that became part of Philippine cooking too, anywhere from 1565 to 1898, the Spanish era. Guisado can be confusing for first-time cooks of Philippine recipes. That is because it has two local definitions. There is a lot of Chinese influence, and frying in pork lard is one of them. A fryer, however, noted that in the 1600s, Filipinos had long lives because they did not eat a lot of fried and fatty foods. It was the Chinese who fried. In Filipino, the imperative gisa means to saute or to stir fry. But Philippine dishes called guisado begin with light frying, what is called sofrito in other countries, to which meats are added and allowed to cook. Then the real wonderment begins when they release their own juices, or when liquid is added and everything in the pot is allowed to cook slowly into a tender, savor-rich guisado. There were many Spanish dishes that came to the Philippines. They were adjusted to the flavoring profile islanders liked. Natives did not make salad with vinegar and oil, but they had been steeping fresh Paco fern tendrils in vinegar. The imperial maritime route brought European and Latin American ingredients in contact with those from the Asian insular region and the Asian continent. Goat and deer are descended from Asian ancestors. Asian fowls substituted for European varieties. Chicken had to be introduced into Latin America by the Spanish, but it is native to the Philippines. Pao mango is smaller than a thumb. It was brined unripe and became the substitute for olive, carried on galleons and eaten as an appetizer. The culinary use of pre-colonial Philippine vinegars made of coconut and nipa palms offer a very distinct and wonderful taste. Our tuba wine, made from coconut inflorescence sap, was introduced to Mexico by Filipino sailors who jumped ship. It is now celebrated as part of Mexican culinary heritage. It was from Spain that we learned about saffron, for which our local substitute was kasubha. Olive oil, imported, was well guarded by those who could afford it. Lard became popular over time and was imported from China in bulk from the 16th century through the 1930s. Pineapple grew very well in some islands. It was eaten as in the Caribbean, first washed in water to remove acidity, and then eaten with salt. Country cuisines grow richer with appreciation for both endemic and indigenous ingredients, plus the innovative ways to prepare them for deliciousness. Our food is not only a reminder of Spain's age of discovery, it is the United Nations on a plate. We hope you will have a chance to enjoy Philippine cuisine as a giver of happiness. Pleasures increase when we remember that there is history in every dish and a memory in every taste.
Brava! Thank you so much, Miss Felice Sta.MARIA. Maybe all give her a virtual round of applause. So thank you. It has been a very moving presentation. I learned a lot, as always. And I just love it when you said that the world is united in the kitchen. And indeed, to understand the food of a destination, one must look back into history and interlace that relationship with geography, culture, and biodiversity. As people travel, trade, and migrate, and so do food, ingredients, cooking techniques, and cultures. To quote our speaker, there is history in every dish, a memory in every taste. We hope you will have a chance to enjoy Philippine cuisine as a giver of happiness. I'm sure that after this rich presentation, you will have comments and questions. Just hit the Q&A button. We will have an open forum after our next speaker. Our next speaker is a woman of the world. She's the daughter of an American father and two women. Her biological mother is Korean and her foster mother is a Filipina. And she has famous Asian restaurants in Argentina and the Philippines. It's a joy to have the opportunity to organize the Philippine photo shoot of her recently published book, Cocinera Filipina. Filipino or not Filipino? That is the question. Ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you Chef Christina Sunae.
Hi everyone, how are you? Thank you, Clang. Clang and I have become very good friends over the years. Her taking me around the Philippines and showing me around of all the other places that I don't know. If you don't know me, I was born in the U.S. Like Clang said, I was born to a Korean mother, but I actually grew up in a Filipino household. My father remarried when I was very, very young, and so I grew up with my Filipino mother. She's watching right now. Hi, Mom. Her name is Alice, or if you want to say her name, her name is Angeles Melo. It's very Spanish. She is a quarter Spanish, so we have a lot of Spanish traditions in our house, but mainly Filipino. This is my new book. This is the first Filipino cookbook that has been published in Spanish, written for the Spanish speaker, not translated. So this is available now in Argentina, and it is also available in Amazon Español as well. So I need to speak Spanish, no? I'm going to speak Spanish. I forgot.
You can also speak in Pampanga.
Yo vivo en Argentina. Como escuché inglés con Clang, empecé a pensar distinto. Bueno, yo tengo 2 restaurantes en Argentina y tengo un restaurante en Filipinas, en Manila. La mayoría parte de mis recetas, la base de mis recetas viene de la cocina filipina, porque es lo que aprendí en casa, es lo que me enseñó mi mamá. Yo pasé mi niñez en Filipinas y bueno, cuando yo decidí hacer ese libro, que es un sueño que tuve hace 10 años y hace 5 años estoy trabajando en el libro, Mis Felices fue fundamental para que yo pueda entender por qué cocinamos, por qué comemos lo que comemos en casa. Ni mi mamá sabía, entonces yo tenía que ir más profundo. Ella es una mujer increíble que está estudiado, que sabe muchísimo de la historia de la cocina filipina. Y para hacer el libro, yo fui a visitarla, aparte si compran el libro, hay una página entera que escribo de ella, cómo me enseñó, y una parte que me enseñó que todas las culturas en el mundo, siempre todos empezaron con una hoja. Entonces en las Filipinas nosotros todavía usamos hojas para cocinar, envolver, hoja de plátano, con hojas de coco, siempre estamos usando. En Latinoamérica se usa también con los tamales, en Venezuela tienen un tamal que lo tienen para Navidad, en México lo tenés los tamales, en el norte de Argentina usan la chala para los tamales. Entonces hay muchas cosas parecidas. Y bueno, en la presentación de Felices también presentó que la colonia española iba a través de México. Entonces, ¿qué pasó en ese momento? Los productos entraban, salían. Entonces hay algunos productos que nosotros usamos muchísimo en Filipinas que compartimos igual con México, Venezuela, Ecuador. Por ejemplo, hay una foto ahí, tengo achiote, en Filipinas se llama achuete. Es una foto ahí. Perfecto. Es una foto de las semillas de achuete. ¿Qué se usa ese achuete? Ese le da color y tiene un sabor ahumado, apenitas. No tiene mucho sabor, pero le da un color. Ese color le deja como azafrán. En Filipinas no usamos azafrán, pero en España usamos azafrán. Entonces, los arroces, los aceites, pintamos los brochettes, sale un color muy lindo, como naranja. Creo que tenemos otra foto de la planta. Hay otra foto de la planta. Can you show that, Raquel? The next one? I don't have it. Sorry. Okay, I need to speak slower. Muy bien. Switch to English. Okay, I will speak English now. Now I'm lost with the video. Okay, there it is. Am I talking too fast? I'm talking too fast in Spanish. Perfect. Okay, so we use achuete to give color. And like we did in Spain, they use azafran. Also, in the presentation of Felices, she also talked about curcuma, using it in rice, or turmeric, using it in rice. just like how they would saute in Spain. I think it's easier for me to speak Spanish. Is that okay? Because now I'm getting confused. Okay. I want to talk about the techniques. We have some photos in there with the techniques. We talked about the original native technique of cooking was in the bamboo. That's what in the Philippines we had. I have 2 photos in there. That's with the bamboo. There, Clang was with me when we went to my friend's house in Bacolod, and they showed us the traditional ancestral way of cooking. It was cooking soup inside the bamboo. Later, what Felice talked about is the Spanish introducing other methods, like using the palayok with clay pots. That wasn't traditional. So those are evolutions of what would happen there. That's a photo. I don't know if Eduardo is connected, Eduardo Torres, but that's one of his photos. He's the photographer that did my book, and it's an amazing photographer. But that's the palayok, and that's how the evolution of cooking has changed. And these are things that I actually learned from Felice's, because I didn't know that. In my house, we always had a palayok. This is how we always cooked. I thought that was the more traditional, the original way of cooking. Yes, for me it is, but I had to learn where everything came from. Also, there's another picture coming up of frying. Coming up, yes, empanadas. Empanadas is very Spanish. Throughout all of Latin America, we have empanadas, especially in Argentina. Here in Buenos Aires, we have them, they're cooked in the oven. If you go to the north, they're fried. You go to Venezuela, they're made with corn. In this picture, they're made with rice. Well, there's also another picture, I think, of the Kalinsky, empanada Kalinsky. You have that one? Yeah, that one. Where it kind of looks like a fish scale. It's like very crispy and flaky. And that's also a very traditional Filipino dish. But these type of dishes, the empanada, we share throughout Latin America as well. And the type of frying, what is our way? What is the Filipino way of frying? Frying in a wok. That's making the cooking what was learned from China, but making it very Filipino. So that's also something that I learned from the research of going through the Philippines and meeting with Felices. Other things that we learned about was adobo, the same words. This whole presentation is about Spanish words, right? So we talk about adobo. This picture is estofado. This recipe I learned in Villa Escudero in the south of Manila, the south in Luzon. And it's very Chinese in flavor. It has anise. It's cooked in a wok. It's pork. It has plátano. Plátano is something that we share with Latin America and also with the Philippines. Lechon. Do we have a picture of lechon? That's lechon. We have a picture of lechon. Well, going back to the presentation, lechon is a Spanish word, but the way of making lechon, this is the Filipino way. This is the island way of cooking lechon. But here, if you come to Argentina at Christmas time, there's lechon also, but they make it different. They make it on the parrilla. So there's similarities, and it's the same name, but they're made differently because the lechon cooked that way is the island way, the Filipino way. The picture of the turon. Can you go back to the picture of the turon? The turon, it's what we would say in Spanish, arrochadito. But the turon in Spanish is the white thing that crispy, that you eat during Christmas time. The turon Filipino is a fried lumpia with banana or fruit inside. So it's something that you can eat. It's a street food that we eat often. Can we go to some of the religious photos? There we go. All throughout the Philippines, you see Catholic, you see how the missionaries had come in. You see it everywhere, everybody. What is it, 80? I think it's 80% Catholic in the Philippines. Very dominant because of the Spanish colonial that went all over. Very similar to Mexico. There's something, I was speaking to a friend today, and I called him and I was asking him about the similarities between Mexico and the Philippines. And there's something that we share is in Semana Santa, or I don't know how you say Semana Santa in English anymore.
Holy Week.
Holy Week. In Holy Week, you have the walk of the cross, Jesus Christ making his way. I think the Philippines and Mexico is the only place where they do that anymore. I don't know of any other country, so that's something that's shared between two different continents, one in the Pacific, the Philippines, and in Mexico. Where I grew up in the Philippines, in Pampanga, they actually have, they have these, what do you call it, palos? I can't remember what the name is, but where they hurt themselves in the back, the little spikes, as they walk over to Jesus Christ's way. I'm translating from Spanish. Other things, there's a Santo Niño. Can you go back to the Santo Niño? What I learned in the Philippines, every store has a Santo Niño. Why do they have a Santo Niño? Because it brings prosperity. So everybody wants their business to grow. And that's very, it's a mix of Asia and Spanish together, this prosperity. And going back to the Felice is talking about fiestas. In Argentina, when you say a fiesta, it's a party, right? But in the Philippines, a fiesta is like a religious party, when they celebrate the saints. That also happens in Mexico. So there are similarities. And during these times, what do? We celebrate with food and family. We gather all around food. That's the Filipino way. Can we go to the next photo? There we go. You see lots of photos of those. Okay, next photo. Another photo. Hi. Okay. There's me and Clang. This is us in the rice terraces in Banaue. Well, rice is super important, like in the presentation. So we had to go there and visit there because rice is part of the Filipino culture. The meal is not finished if you don't, it's not a meal if you don't have the rice. It's very, very, very important to that. Going back to my mom, I'm sure my mom's listening right now. My family is, my grandmother is half Spanish. Her name is Presentacion, and her mother was Spanish. So there was a lot of the way we ate at home. We had pan de sal in the morning, which bread was brought over, the technique of making bread and using ovens was brought over from the Spanish. So that was something we had every morning, was coffee and pan de sal. And going back to another word that we use a lot in my family, because my grandmother lives right next to the market. We call the market palenque. Palenque in Spanish is like where you put away the horses. If anybody is listening, they could correct me if I'm wrong. But the palenque is the local market in the Philippines, and we always said we're going to the palenque, which is a very, very, very.
I think we lost Christina, or am I still here? So she was doing the presentation of our Philippine journey for the production of her book called Cuisine Filipina. So let's wait for her to reconnect. So she has with her a big team to document everything, and I'm very excited to see her book, because this one is Filipino cookbook with the insights from Christina in contemporary rendition, and it's written in Spanish. So I hope you can support that, and that's published by Catapulta. And there's already a lineup of activities to promote it in Latin America and in Spain as well. So she's our culinary ambassador of Filipino foods in Latin America and Spain. Can we call Christina? What happened to her? So if you have, I'm sure you have enormous amount of curiosity running in your mind right now. So we have Miss Felice Prudente-Sta.MARIA. She's very generous to everyone. She's like a mentor of every culinary enthusiast who wants to learn about Filipino food and history. And I'm honored and blessed to be part of her circle. Whenever I need anything, I can just send her a message and she will reply immediately. And she's very active on social media. So I will be posting her Instagram and Facebook official pages. So you can follow her journey, very educational, because she made it easy for all of us. Basically, she's dissecting the colonial era, the Philippine colonial era, in the perspective of food, history, and culture. So all you have to do is read her post because she has precious books that does not exist anymore. So I remember when Christina shared a while ago that we visited her in her home. She has like a library of old books, and you know, it's a treasure trove. So thank you, Miss Felice, for enriching us with your knowledge and for continuously documenting it. And she just recently published a book called Pigafetta's Philippine Picnic. So that one is very interesting because I have a book of Antonio Pigafetta. But those are just like written notes, but to have like a critique, a review and analysis, and that's where she comes in. So thank you, Miss Felice. Do you have anything to share? While we are waiting for Christina to reconnect.
Well, you know, I brought something, I put something on my desk just to show you. You know, you never know what one will find when doing food history research in the Philippines. And I've been doing this for many years. And there is a Philippine ambassador. She's a career diplomat, and she's from Bicol clan. And one of the treasures, I have a study copy, but one of the treasures she has is this thing that I had copied, okay? What it is Arte Novismo de Cocina. This is from 1831, and it was originally dedicated to Señoritas Mexicanas. So this is an 1831 set of recipes that would be considered the modern Mexican cooking. And one of the most precious items that's Latin American that I've acquired is from 1863. So this is in the Philippines, okay? So like there's this book, and it was owned by a medical doctor, Nueva Cocina Americano en Forma de Diccionario. So it's something like, for those of you who do research, the Larousse Gastronomique, it is something like that, but from 1863. And so, you know, here, you can look up budin, for instance. I'm looking budin. And then they have things like calabaza cubierta, dulces de pasta, And so then we start trying to figure out where is the connection between our Asian cooking and the Spanish cooking that we learned. I think what's very interesting is that, and you might want to look at this in your own countries, is that while we have imported cookbooks about Spanish cooking, whether from different parts of Spain or Latin America, and then we have our own Philippine written cookbooks that include our versions of Spanish and Latin American cooking. When the American period started and home economics was introduced, the textbooks for home economics included the Spanish name dishes. So you can look at a Philippine home economics cookbook, and you will see sinigang is a very ancient Philippine soup. It's a slightly sourish soup. It's not like the Thai soup that hits you with the sourness. It's a little more tame, but that's the Filipino way. And you'll have something like that. It's very Asian, and then side by side with it, you have a recipe for Philippine adobo, which is not the same as in other parts of the former Spanish Empire. Is Christina back?
Not yet, but I think we can somehow entertain some questions because the chat box is filled with questions.
Oh, great.
While waiting for her, we have here a question from Nastasia Ali from Toronto, Canada.
Natasha, how are you? I haven't seen you in ages. How are you?
Yes.
Dear?
So I sent her the link. So I kinda lost it because it's already flooded. Which ports in Argentina is there documentation for where the galleons landed? Is there?
No. The period of the galleon is quite interesting. It will. There were, from Spain, it would go into the Caribbean area. And then from the Caribbean area, it would split. So part of the fleet would go to where Panama is. And then another part would go to Veracruz in Mexico. Then later you had, because it took a while for Spain to assure its presence in South America. It didn't happen that you had Mexico and then you had Argentina and you had Chile and you had them all at the same time. It wasn't like that if you look at the history. So then eventually, Argentina is one of the later developments. So you would find the ports, and then it goes around, and then it goes upwards around the continent. But the connection, if you're thinking of Philippine food, Natasha, the connection wouldn't be from Argentina. The connection was really that one little boat from Manila to Acapulco and Acapulco to Manila. The galleon is quite a strange story in itself, but it carried tuba, carried coconut wine, and the sailors would drink the coconut wine in little coconut cups because coconut cups wouldn't break. So that was good for bringing on the boat. And the food on the galleon was horrible. The galleon wasn't anything close to today's cruise ships. It didn't have cabins. It didn't have a dining room. It didn't have a kitchen. They just put up little textile partitions. And it was really horrible. It's amazing how people survived it. So for Philippine history, food history, it would really be the Mexican connection. For a short time, very early on, there was a connection with Peru. But for studying the food, it's really via Mexico. Everything is via Mexico.
All right. Thank you so much, Miss Felice. Isn't she a walking encyclopedia of history? So thank you. We also have a special guest. We have Mr. Fernando Shalsita, our friend, the head of anthropology of Ateneo de Manila. He's raising his hand. Sir, come on board.
Butch, you're up early. It's early.
No, I really enjoy the whole thing. It's
Ay,
wonderful to hear both
you.
you and Christina. We've been wanting to meet Christina because we're organizing this conference on Latin American studies next year.
Yeah, I already read the email.
Yeah.
We'll follow through with her. We are still looking for her at this point. She might have lost her connection.
I think so.
But I think she's here right now. Yeah, but sir, you have yeah, so we will make sure to we'll make sure that Christina reads your message. I didn't realize that we have a Latin America Association in the Philippines, so it will be interesting to have her on board. And also to promote her book. Can you imagine we have a Filipino cookbook written in Spanish?
Finally.
Finally, after centuries ago.
Well, you know what's interesting is if you look at books written by the Spanish, and they started doing, for instance, they would have recipes about rice dishes in different parts of the world. And this would be like in the early 1900s up to about the 1930s. And I always look for the Philippines. Is there a Philippine rice dish there? And the only little rice dish they had in the Spanish cookbook was white rice with a tiny, they say, make a mound of white rice, put a tiny little fish on top, and if you want, then you can put some sauce. I was thinking, oh dear, you're missing so much of the fun. Philippine food and rice dishes go way beyond a mound of rice and a little bit of fish. Granting that that is really the traditional food. So thankfully, we've got Christina.
Christina, are you back? Oh, yes.
Great.
Because there are some questions here so far, but we'll address that later. Thank you. Christina can hear. If not, probably we can address one question here. So we have a message from Richmond Jimenez from Philippine Tourism Los Angeles. He said, Daniel has a question. Given the widespread use of corn in Mexico, how prevalent is the use of corn in the Philippines, tortillas, tamales, etc.?
Do you want me to answer that in my fashion? So corn was introduced very early on. During the time of the Gaspi, they already were planting, and it was a fallback food, emergency food. So it started to grow in Cebu, and then eventually was spread to other parts of the country. I think how do I say this? When corn was introduced into the Philippines, it was a secondary or tertiary staple. The main cereal in the Philippines at that time was rice. So you only had corn as a fallback. It never became the principal cereal, but corn was the principal cereal in Mexico. And when they tried to, I suspect they must have tried to introduce a tortilla, but the making of the tortilla requires a brand new type of technology. You have to know how to harvest it correctly, and then how to grind it down into the kind of flour that's needed, and then you have to have the pan, for making the tortilla and all of that. And I sincerely think we didn't make it because we didn't need it. What we needed was the cereal, not the tortilla. And so if you read even into the 1800s, and you read it from Father Manuel Blanco, who was quite credited as I guess like as a botanist, he explains that in the Philippines, corn is plucked a little earlier than in other places. So it's still not quite, at that time, I'm talking about the early 1800s, it was still taken slightly a little bit, just a little bit green, not quite manibalang, between manibalang for Filipinos, between manibalang and ripe. And Filipinos preferred to have it roasted. They liked it roasted, which is still the case today. Or they would remove the kernels and they would mix it with the rice. So they would cook corn the way that they cook rice. So you can see the dominance of the Philippine style of cooking when applied to a new botanical that comes in. It's very similar, if I may, to tamal. I think it was important for the missionaries to have portable food. And whether they were in Mexico because they went to school there, they were assigned there as priests, or because they were waiting for the galleon, they would have gotten exposed to the tamal. Now, tamal you can carry with you. And in those days, people walked. You had to walk. There were no roads. There were only walking trails if you were lucky. When you got to the Philippines, there were only walking trails, hiking, or you'd have to take a little banca down a river or along a coastline. And so having portable food, I think was very important. So when they got to the Philippines, they were looking for tamal. And what they found, and you'll see it in the records, they found suman, which is a rice cake wrapped in leaves, which was also seen by the circumnavigation in 1521. And so they said, in the Philippines, they don't have tamal, in the sense that they don't have a corn tamal. But they have what we call the Philippine tamal. And the Philippine tamal is the suman, which is rice, whether ground or rice grain, that is wrapped in leaves, banana leaves, and made into a little portable cake. So again, you see that there's a similarity between the tamal and the suman. Now, while in Mexico, there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kinds of tamal, because it's really from there. In the Philippines, you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kinds of suman. And we adopted the suman when we started to try to make the tamal. And how did we do that? We took the suman and we started adding fish or chicken on top before wrapping it up in the leaf. So you can again see how certain foreign dishes can easily slip into and become part of a dominant food culture. So we have our tamal, which we call tamales, un tamal in Mexico, un tamales in Filipinas. So the tamales, the Philippine tamales, is its own. It's really its own, but it's inspired by Mexican cooking. So we don't have the tortilla, I think, because we didn't need it. But we took what we liked from the tamales, which was putting a protein on top of rice and making it a portable meal, something like the Philippine patel, something like that.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Felice. And if I may share some of my culinary discoveries around the Philippines. So basically, the use of corn in the Philippines, we love it roasted or boiled. But in my travel to Mindanao, the Blaan community, ethnic community,
Yes.
they have a corn soup with chicken soup. They have a way of slicing the kernels thinly, and then
Yes.
place it in a bamboo with chicken broth, and then fire it on over bamboo. And then in Maguindanao and Sulu, when I visited, apparently they have like a wrap, no? It looks like tamales. It looks like tamales, but it's sweet. Sweet. And then in the Visayas, they use corn grits as alternative to rice. So those are just some of my recollections. And also in Isabela, because Ilagan, Isabela is the corn capital of the Philippines. They also, if you will see that in the palengke, there are vendors who are like slicing the white corn kernel because they use that to thicken the broth of every broth for similar to the Ilocano dishes. So that's their base of thickener, and they have so many interpretation for that. In fact, they already infused science and are now making pasta out of corn, so gluten-free. Yes. So those are just some of the recollections of my travels around the Philippines. So I'm also documenting a lot of it, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. So right now, yeah, so again.
No, see, I mean, for our audience, so you can see what happens. I mean, here's the corn, and all of us think of tortillas and those tortilla chips that I think everybody around the world is eating. But like Clang is pointing out, in the Philippines, we've turned it into other things. I mean, if you go to Pampanga, where we have a wonderful chef by the name of Claude Tayag, you've got to have suam. And suam incorporates corn. And in the Philippines, we have so many kinds of corn now, much more, I think, than we did before. So we have some corn that is sticky, which is what Clang is speaking about. There's some corn that's really sticky, and that's white, and that's the kind that they use for the suam in Pampanga. But then on the other hand, where Professor Shalsita is from, one of the programs I think of Ateneo, correct me if I'm wrong, Butch, was introducing the sweet Japanese corn. That was probably what, in the last 20 years. And so we have this, what we call the old-fashioned white sticky corn. And then we have this also very wonderful sweet Japanese corn that's very yellow. And there are other corns with many colors, like the ones also out of Mexico are now being grown as artisanal corn in the Philippines. So the whole world is again sharing. It's really amazing. And that's so just corn.
Yeah, right. So our food travel. So if I may just read some comments. Also a lot of from Nino Ray Galisanao. A lot of people make corn porridge with a mix of sticky rice and ground corn.
Yes.
And pintos made of corn too, a sweet snack made of corn. Yes. But in some provinces, especially in farming families located in the mountainous areas where rice is a bit scarce and are difficult to get hold of, as they need to walk very long and rough path to the more commercialized urban areas, they mix rice and ground corn to save in their supply of rice. In our place, there are also suman made of ground corn.
That's right. That's right.
And I remember when I went to Mount Apo in Davao and met with the Pagobo community, they're making coffee out of ground corn.
Yes, yes.
So those are just some of the uses of that ingredient. So, okay, so well, again, while we're waiting for Christina, I will just give way to the chat. Okay. Vikael is raising his hand. He's the trade attaché in Mexico. Sir, are you online right now? Would you like to? Yes.
I'm online.
Yes, yes, sir. Go ahead. Thank you for joining us today. Do you have message or comments, questions?
Hi, sorry, I was lost a while ago. My name is Michael Roring. I'm the Department of Trade and Industries Trade Counselor here in Latin America. Solo quiero hacer un comento, ¿no? sobre los comentos de la señora Felice Prudente-Sta.MARIA. Uno, muchas gracias por mencionar que que México tiene un gran parte, ¿no? Sobre la historia culinaria de nuestro país. Por ejemplo, ¿no? Yo estoy viviendo aquí en México hace 5 años. Las palabras como camote, chayote, changi, no son, no tiene origen de español, son de náhuatl, una lenguaje nativo de México. Y mi segundo punto, ya lo vi Christina Sunae. He comido muchas veces en su restaurante. Después de nuestra embajadora LINGLINGAY LACANLALE, la segunda embajadora culinaria en la elección es Christina Sunae, ¿no? Cada vez en su restaurante es una experiencia, una fiesta gastronómica. No voy a decir que la experiencia es como si fuera en casa, ¿no? Porque es una experiencia más elevada, ¿no? Y Christina, ¿no? Hace 2 años que tuvimos, tiene una lectura en Cordón Bleu, la escuela Cordón Bleu aquí en México, ¿no? Muchas gracias por todos sus esfuerzos y finalmente ya tiene su libro. Felicidades, ¿no?
Muchas gracias.
All right. Thank you so much. Welcome back. Thank you so much, Mr. Michael Roaring.
Yeah. Last point, quiero invitar a todos nuestros amigos en IFEX Connect, ifexconnect.com. Es una feria para compradores e importadores de comida filipina y asiática, ¿no? Un reto para nosotros. Estamos hablando sobre la tema de comida filipina, la historia, y para promoverlos tenemos abrir, ¿no? Los vínculos comerciales. Y si tienen alguna duda o quieren encontrar contrapartes o proveedores, mi correo electrónico y la página para la feria ya está en el chat box. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Mr. Michael Roaring. And I remember curating some Philippine culinary heritage dishes during the IFEX Philippines as well. Thank you. We would like to acknowledge the presence of Chef Cloud Tayag. Thank you. He's here. So he was one of the first stops when Christina went to the Philippines. So we'd like to welcome back Miss Christina Sunae. Christina, can you hear us?
Muchas gracias. Hola.
Would you like to continue with your presentation?
Yeah, I'd like to finish. I'm so sorry. I logged in a couple of times and I couldn't hear the presentation. And I was like, oh, what's going on? Anyway, I'm back on. What I wanted to. I can hear somebody speaking. Oh, I should turn that off, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Now I'm on. Like, who is that speaking? Okay, so there was a translator. What I wanted to talk about is, I was talking about palenque, right? It was the last thing I said.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Yes.
In the palenque, next to my grandmother's house, we only have beef once a week on Friday. They only sell beef in the palenque because we don't normally eat beef every day. However, one of my favorite dishes that my mom makes is called nilaga, or in Kapampangan it's liga. And that's my favorite dish that I ask for all the time, and it's a beef soup. But we only have it once a week when we lived in Pampanga, when we lived in Angeles City, because we could only buy beef once a week, and we always buy fresh. The way you buy in the Philippines, you don't freeze it. Most people, traditionally, people don't have freezers. You buy your food fresh every day. You go to the market in the morning, you buy everything, and you cook it for lunch, and then whatever's left over, you eat it for the evening, and then for breakfast, it's like whatever's left over with fried rice, with rice and garlic, or with longanisa or tuyo.
uno cocina en la mañana y después le queda algo. Volviendo en la forma tradicional de comer en mi, poníamos arroz junto con vinagre, ajo, con longaniza, ahí comíamos mucho. Y luego íbamos al palenque para el almuerzo y comprábamos.
We would cook the lunch, but that lunch would be a very big lunch, or it would go into the evening, that type of food. So sometimes in the evening, the food was a little bit cold because we ate it hot in the for lunch. So, and you can't forget merienda in the afternoon. You know, it's always eating some type of suman or something like that with coconut or calamay. In my house, we always had calamay, which is, I think it's more kapampangan that way. No, I was just finishing up with that. That's what I was finishing up with. I'm so privileged to have met Felice's and that she helped me with my book. It was impossible to do the book the way I did it. I'm so happy to have Clang by my side, who took me around. I wanted to go to 12 different places and she took me there and she showed me places that I have never been to. You know, in the Philippines, you just kind of stay in your own hometown. You don't really travel. Like a normal Filipino doesn't really travel all over. But Clang is the queen of traveling and knows everything about the Philippines. She took me all around. I learned about the Muslim community, the way they ate, very similar to how they eat in Indonesia. Oh, I love that picture. I don't have that picture. You have to send that picture to me. I love that picture. Wow. And there I'm with Laura. She's the co-author of my book. She helped me with more of, I wrote all the recipes and gave the ideas, and she helped me with more like the history part and putting it more in like real correct Spanish, because Spanish is my second language. But we did write it in Spanish together. And is there a picture of the group that all went to the Philippines together? Is there a group with Eduardo, his two sons, Joaco and Lucas? I have a picture in there.
Yes, in Cavite. That was your last frame of your presentation. Yeah. I think that's where you ended. Thank you for this wonderful photo.
Yeah, I wanted to show a group picture. This is actually, we went to a traditional Filipino house. The traditional Filipino house, for me, it's like, has a little bit of that island Japanese and Spanish mixed together. And that's a local Filipino house to me. Because if you go to Japan, there's something similar, but it's not quite. And then you have that Spanish look that's added to it. And the house that we were doing the photo shoot that day and having our meal was a typical Filipino house. So, and thank you for taking me there, Clang. And incredible to have the book photographed by Eduardo Torres, who is Argentine, and he couldn't believe how happy Filipinos are. In the presentation, we talked about happiness. Being Filipino is sharing, it's being generous, it's giving. When you go into this country in the Philippines, everyone invites you to their house, and the first thing they offer you is food. That's the Filipino way, and everyone is happy to do it. They may not have much, but they'll give you what they have, and that's Filipino to me. And I was so lucky to grow up in that culture. I'm so privileged to have grown up in the Filipino culture. Hi, Mom, if you're there.
Hello to the mom of Christina. Thank you so much, Christina.
I
remember, when Christina asked me to draw the itinerary, she said her first stop would be the Palenque in Pampanga, where she used to grew up with, where she would always go when she was young. So that brought back so much memories, and she started telling stories of her grandmother. So thank you so much, Christina. You have no idea what we had to go through just to finish her book. It was, she did her preliminary research. She went to the Philippines several times until such time she's ready to bring in a team. We traveled around the Philippines, documenting for everything for 3 weeks, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, that we have to cram all the itinerary. We would go to Cordillera overnight to Pampanga, for just like 2 nights. It's just overnight. Palawan, can you imagine overnight? So just to be able to put together the book.
Taking an airplane at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Our bodies were shaking, but it has been a very joyful and memorable experience. It's nice to rediscover everything with you. So what a pleasure to listen to your stories. So everyone, today we got to listen to 2 different speakers with the transition from history to wanderlust. Christina Sunae's insatiable curiosity and repertoire of experiences sculpted her to be the person she is today. It is incredible to note that she is of American and Korean ancestry, raised by a Filipino mother, and deeply embraced it as her own. In fact, in her restaurant in Argentina, there is a mural of the Philippine Banawe rice terraces with Wang Od, a celebrated tattoo artist in Cordillera. She also serves a rich diversity of traditional Filipino dishes in contemporary rendition. And now a book entitled Cuisine Filipina. Filipino or not Filipino? I think the question has been answered. So we are all on Instagram and Facebook. If you wish to follow our posts, we will be posting them on the chat box. And today we will we will now start with our open forum. And we lost you a while ago, Christina, but we have guest Professor Fernando Shalcita from Ateneo de Manila. And he's in there inviting you for the Latin American Association. I already volunteered you.
Of course.
Yes. Okay. And an email, I already gave your email address. The invitation is now in your inbox. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Miss Felice Sta.MARIA, follow her Instagram and Facebook. And these are like morsels of food history. So I'll be posting that. And then I will start reading some of the questions. Okay, chat box. Also, Christina, Chef Claude Tayag is here.
Hi, Claude. How are you?
Wait, Q&A. So on the pin, there's a message here from Sandro Castro Baker. I'm confused about Philippine adobo. Is the original adobo marinated in vinegar? Miss Felice Sta.MARIA. You can, Christine would like to answer?
I just want to say one thing. In my family, we don't marinate adobo in my family. We cook it in vinegar first.
Okay, then this is a good follow-up. As I've been explaining, and this is documented, I'm not making this up, okay? If you look at the recipe books in the 1930s, and these are recipe books that were being shared with the folk, and there were 2 ways to cook adobo in the 1930s. One way is exactly the way Christina is explaining it, where you take your chicken or your pork and then you put it in a pot that has vinegar. If you want, you spice the vinegar and you cook it in the vinegar. And that would be a very old-fashioned, very ancient way of cooking, because we cook fish that way. We have pakshu, for instance. It's cooked like that. And we have other dishes that seem to be very pre-colonial, where we cook in vinegar. Okay? But the Spanish introduced a new way of cooking. So if you look at that list that I put of different techniques, they introduced the idea of marinating. Now, in my family and my husband's family, so we're talking Cavite, and even on my mother's side, so we're talking Iloilo. And what they do is they make a vinegar bath, and then they put the meats in there. And that vinegar bath has all kinds of spices and things. And then they put the meats in there and they marinate them. And even my husband will say, please marinate it overnight, because then the flavor goes all the way through in the meat. So after marinating it, that's when we start to cook it. So as you can see, in the Philippines, there are two ways to make this, what we call Philippine adobo. Now, adobo in Spain means the marinade itself. You won't be able to find a dish in a Spanish cookbook called adobo. It doesn't exist. But if you look for how do you make marinades, how do you make adobos, you'll find they do it with wine, they do it with vinegar, they have different kinds of spices. And in Mexico and in Cartagena de las Indias, both places I went to markets and little supermarkets where the people went. And I would ask them, how do you make adobo? And they would look at me. And then one lady standing in line, she showed me these instant packages of spices. And she said, well, you know, you just get vinegar and you put this package of spices in the vinegar, and then you put your meat in there and you keep it there for a couple of hours. She says you put that in the morning when you wake up, and then you cook it at lunchtime. So you see the whole concept of having a marinade became two things in the Philippines. One, a very ancient way, cooking it the way Christina's doing it, in vinegar directly, no marinating. And then the other kind, like what we do in Cavite, where we marinate it first. So you have your choice. You can cook it either way.
Thank you so much, Miss Felice. Now we have a question from Danielle. Was the process of making tequila in Mexico actually introduced by the Philippines? To what extent is this true? Or was this process introduced to the Philippines, which resulted in lambanog, or coconut wine?
The presence of coconut wine, Nipa, coconut fluorescence wine, Nipa fluorescence wine, and rice wine are pre-colonial and are pre-colonial. The rice wine was documented as early as the 1200s, as early as the 13th century. So it was documented ahead of the coconut wine. But no, it's ours. It's ours. And what happened was the coconut, for that matter, the botanical coconut, you will find that there is a Pacific type of coconut. That's the one where the bottom of the coconut is rounded. Okay. And that's the kind you'll find on the west coast of Mexico. And when the Filipinos jumped ship, and can you imagine if you came on that Eastern voyage that could take what, 5 months, 8 months, through very cold waters, and a lot of people really get sick during that voyage, and a lot of them die from all sorts of things. And you finally make it to Mexico. You don't want to risk going back to Manila and having to do this all over again. So somehow they jumped ship, and some of them went up north to where Louisiana is now. Some of them went to the Jalisco area. And that's where they started to make bootleg coconut wine. The Mexicans didn't know yet what to do with the coconut, how to make it into an alcohol. That's ours. And I'm so pleased. I think it's beautiful that Filipinos contributed something to Mexican culinary heritage. I think it's beautiful. That has been extremely well documented. We were trying to invite a friend, in fact, who is the specialist. She's the specialist in tuba history in Mexico. So I think I don't know if she's with us today, because I think she's in Paris now. But it's definitely from the Philippines, very well documented. very well documented.
And I remember
Everybody
before
from Mexico is listening, right? Everybody
Okay.
from Mexico is listening, right?
And we also have, you know, that one has also been a topic when we handled the Philippine journey, culinary journeys of celebrity film chefs. And I had the privilege to invite Professor Fernando Shalcita from Ateneo de Manila. And that has been our topic. And that has been a very interesting insights from him. Christina, I would like to introduce to you Professor Fernando Shalcita. Sir, are you still here? Okay, I think he's gone. If you're here. If not, may we call on someone is raising his hand. Dr. Ezequiel Ramoneda is raising his hand. Yes, sir? Are you still around? Okay. Who else are around? No more. Okay, let me read some of the...
They want to eat dinner.
Yeah. Gracias. Gracias. Muy interesante. Yeah. We have some comments here. All right. I think that's about it. Sandra Castro Baker, interesting contributions, everyone. There's a question from Rachel Javier Gonzalez. How about cassava? Is that native to the Philippines?
No, it isn't. There's a whole story about cassava. It isn't native to us.
It's also part of the galleon trade that landed our shore. Also, I would like to acknowledge the... yeah, go ahead, sorry.
You know, one of the most... Something you have to understand in Philippine food history is that it's a new realm. And secondly, the Portuguese were in the insular Asian area before the Spanish. So it is also very possible that some of the Latin American botanicals got into insular Southeast Asia through the Portuguese before the Spanish arrived. So there is a possibility also because of the strength of the Bornean Sultanate that foods that came in through the Portuguese got to Borneo, the island of Borneo, to the Sultanate of Borneo, would have followed the trade route of Borneo. And the trade route of Borneo went all the way up through into Manila. And some of the datus or rajas had intermarried with Bornean women from the leading Bornean family. So the food, again, the food could have just gone up through there. In other words, so Latin American food could have come into the Philippines before the Spanish through that. And if you're really interested, I think we should all look into it because I don't know, you know, some of us are older than Clang, for instance. And when we went to school, older than Clang and Christina, when we went to school, the idea of the Austronesian migration was not yet there. And the Polynesian, the possibility of the Polynesian going across the Pacific and getting into South America and bringing back things like the yam, the sweet potato and the yam. So all of this is being studied now through DNA research. So expect things to change. In other words, we tell you something now. It could be that the DNA research will reveal something else next week. But that's how it is. That's the excitement of all of this, actually. So that's what we like about it.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Felice.
I have something
Ambassador
to add.
LACANLALE is... Okay, go ahead,
I have something to add. There's the difference between the use of cassava here and in the Philippines. And in the Philippines, they always eat cassava in a dessert. It's always sweet. Here in Latin America, it's always salty. It's always in salty dishes.
Interesting.
So in savories.
Savory, yes.
So we also have some a message from Professor Fernando Shalcita from Ateneo de Manila. He said this in reference to the earlier query about the coconut liquor. He said that for Mexican historians, Zumbo and Colungo, Filipinos introduced the Destillador Filipino to distill liquor from tuba or coconut wine. By 1619, this destillador was being used to distill liquor from agave, namely mezcal.
That's right. Yes.
Very interesting.
Yes,
And then
that's all proven.
Yes,
And
yes.
I suggest, I really suggest for Filipinos, I really suggest that Filipinos also read about Mexican cuisine.
Correct. Yes. There's now, I will share the link. It's now, they already have, they're able to unleash different Mexican cookbooks, ancient Mexican cookbooks, and you can already browse them online. And I see the hands of Ambassador LACANLALE.
Yes.
Yes, Madam.
Thank you. Yes, actually, under the chat, please read that. It's not from Rachel, but it's from Arvin De Leon. Our Consul General is in Istanbul. If you can read those two, if you can read those two messages that he had sent. Thank you.
Okay. So, okay, from Arvin De Leon from Istanbul. Congratulations, Christina, for your new book. I hope I can get a copy soon.
Yeah.
One question, do you still have okoy in your menus? I miss Puerta Cerradas days.
I have the ukoy in the book, but today it is not on the menu. But we will put it back because we changed it out. I hope, Arvin, that you can come back to Argentina, because you have to try my new restaurant, Apunena, as a whole different new flavor to it. But I'll try to get the book to you as soon as I can. I don't know when I'm in Istanbul, but maybe we can meet in the Philippines.
Okay, thank you for that message. And we have someone, Falsonera, raising hand. Nawala. Mr. Falsonero, Belino, are you still with us? From Marta Ramirez, Chef Captain Cook. Gracias, muy interesante. All right. So may we call back Professor Fernando Shalcita? You were here a while ago. You have a message for Christina Sunae. Sir.
I left a message for her.
All right. Christina, meet Professor Fernando Shalcita.
Hi, Fernando. How are you? Good to meet you.
He's the head of anthropology of Ateneo de Manila, and they're having a conference on Latin America.
Okay.
And they would like to invite you.
Okay.
If I may, the ones who are interested in tuba, you should contact Paulina Machuca in Mexico, because she's really the specialist of tuba. No?
And also, we have a message from Marta Marines, Chef Captain Cook, the origin of the corn cheese ice cream. I would like to know as once Ambassador Ray Carandan requests me to do it for him for an event.
That's dirty ice cream in the street, right?
Yeah, it's common. We grew up with that.
Yeah.
And I remember I met a diplomat from the French embassy, and they said, how come you have such different flavors of ice cream? You use root crops as ice cream, you use corn, you use cheese. So basically that's about it. And now there's now soft serve ice cream of corn that's in Isabela province, in Ilagan, the corn capital of the Philippines.
I love corn ice cream.
Yes. And then again, a message from Daniel. Are there many varieties of chilies, peppers grown in the Philippines?
No. Traditionally, no. But nowadays, yes. The Labuyo is the older one, was also called Pasiti. And it's very likely the Mexican ají. So that seems to be it. You know, the chili, we're still tracking because there's an old word, there's a pre-colonial word for chili, lara, which is used in the Portuguese realm. So we're thinking that maybe there was some chili already making its way into certain parts of the Philippines, but undoubtedly it was during the Acapulco connection that chili came. But I'm sure, as Christina will point out, we don't use chilies the same way that they do in Mexico. Partly because we have only that one little tiny little chili. And when the other varieties of chili peppers arrive, we handle them the same way that we handled our traditional labuyo. So if you go to Mexico, they have tons of different kinds of chilies. And so each chili belongs in that specific dish. And they remove the seeds before they cook with it, whereas we tend to just take the whole little chili with the seeds and we throw it into our cooking pot. We also don't dry chilies, whereas in Mexico and even in Spain, they got that from Mexico. They dry the chilies. We don't do that. So there's a lot of difference. But now we've got all kinds of things. We have Louisiana green peppers. Clang, what else have you been seeing? There are all kinds of peppers. There's round ones and long ones and all colors. But it's really our labuyo that we're very proud of. And for those who like the heat, the piquancy, the flavoring of the labuyo is different, even from the other small peppers. So give it a try. It comes like the Jalisco. Oh, I really love going to Jalisco, where they make the sauce, right? The hot sauce. But if you try the Philippine labuyo, it doesn't taste the same. They're really two different products. Right. So for the connoisseurs, you will use the labuyo for some things, and you will use other chilies for other things. So don't forget the labuyo.
Yeah, it's very potent in flavor, even if it's very tiny. I remember we had an Italian guest, and he would always request me to buy him that as his souvenir from the Philippines, because he said it's very different. Even if for a tiny amount, it's exploding with fire. Yes. And what we have right now, we already have different variants of chilies migrated from different parts of the world. And I just got back from a 30-day cultural food mapping in the province of Samar. And guess what I discovered? They have a sili there called siling demonyo, which is very tiny, very tiny. It's like it's the shape of a squash, but very red, and with a tiny amount, it will really explode in your mouth. So like there's so much to share, so much to discover
here.
What?
Similar to the rocoto here in Latin America.
Really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I know they're a little bit, the rocoto is just a little bit bigger like this, and they're very, very, very spicy. Brown, spicy.
Yes. Right now, I think we need to wrap up. We'll just handle some of the fun because we might get cut off because there's only a limit for this time. So I'll just read the message from Marta Ramirez, Chef Captain Cook. Thanks for the answers. I have to leave the Zoom. Excellent to know more about a beautiful culture. Thanks to the Philippine Embajada for this opportunity. From Milagros Garcia, very interesting. Thank you, Felice, Christina, and Clan. Congratulations, Ling, for this enlightening session on food. The past 3 issues of the Philippine Reporter featured Philippine food stories featuring Felice, each one different, covering different eras of Philippine history. May our reporter contact the speakers at some point after this? Yes, of course. So I just posted our respective social media pages, so you can reach us there. So, Madam Ambassador, do you have any closing message?
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you very much. I think this has been a very interesting webinar. It's the first that we have actually organized in Argentina, and I think most of the Latin American countries. And maybe we will do it again, because there's so much to talk about our food and how it has affected, the influences that have affected our local palate. So thank you all very much. Felice, by the way, Felice is an old friend from high school, and he is so kindly given us her time. Thank you very much, Felice. It was a wonderful lecture. Christina, thank you also, and all the best. Your book launching will be done in 7 more places. We hope to participate in some of them. And Clan, thank you for doing such a wonderful job. You were the perfect facilitator for us. We couldn't have asked for anyone better. And we thank everybody who had joined us tonight. Thank you all, and I hope we will see you in the Philippines next time and really taste the real thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador LACANLALE. And may we have closing message from Miss Felice and Christina? Very short before we get cut off. Any closing message from Miss Felice?
Well, why don't I go ahead? Because we want her to promote her book.
All right, go ahead, Christina.
Thank you very much. I'm starting next week. I start 8-city tour all over Argentina, promoting Filipino cuisine in the book. We go to Rosario, Santa Fe, Cordoba. We're going to Iguazu, Mendoza, Capachate, and in January we'll go to Villa Langostura, and also to Mar del Plata, and to Bariloche, Chubut. And then we'll be going to Miami, Los Angeles, and San Francisco.
Thank you.
Richmond.
I'm sure Richmond will be so happy. Thank you. Thank you, Christina.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yes, Madame Felice.
Oh, me. Okay. Well, I hope that everybody enjoyed the presentation, and I hope you'll come to the Philippines, as we've all been saying. It's a beautiful country. It's a country where people are so warm and want to make you happy, and then you'll be surprised by seeing things that are familiar, like the words that are Spanish words, Spanish names for foods, but don't look for the way it's cooked where you come from. Instead, experience the joy of something that's different, because Filipinos have their own way of interpreting the dish. But just remember, there's always the idea of making you happy when you eat. And I hope that's what you bring home.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I would also like to share and invite you that I'm curating some of my travels on our social media pages for Food Holidays in partnership with the Tourism Promotions Board. So these are a way of, promoting culinary tourism. So I have been an inbound tour operator for about 15 years. And I've always promoted culinary was part of our travel menu, but it's not a fast-moving product until there has been a greater awareness on Philippine cuisine. So this project spearheaded by Ambassador LACANLALE is a dream project. I never realized that people will eventually come to the Philippines and explore our foods. So as a closing, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Director Richmond Jimenez, Philippine Tourism Los Angeles. He's been really, integral in making all of these culinary tourism promotions happen. We got the opportunity to work during the Madrid Prisión Manila. So he got that vibe, I got that vibe. So he's now doing it wherever he may be. So thank you, everyone. Please follow our Facebook page, social media pages, Food Holidays. And I hope you can, when everything's in place, please come and visit the Philippines to explore our shared history, cultures, and flavors. Thank you very much. And until we eat again.